Hello, I'm Esther Githu. Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. U.S. vice presidential candidates J.D. Vance and Tim Walz meet Tuesday night in their one and only debate. We'll have a report on what to expect. And October 1st marks the United Nations International Day for Older People, an event commemorated worldwide to raise awareness and support for the elderly. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. As the U.S. presidential election gets closer, vice presidential candidates J.D. Vance and Tim Walz meet Tuesday night in their first and only debate. VOA correspondent Scott Stearns looks at what to expect when the candidates square off in New York.
Go back to San Francisco because she is.
Tim Walz and J.D. Vance will debate on television for 90 minutes Tuesday with 2 moderators and no live audience. Vance is a U.S. senator from the Midwest state of Ohio who's running with Donald Trump. He says the debate is a chance to show how Republicans will improve the economy and secure the border.
It's an opportunity for me to get to tell the American people how I think we can make their lives better and how Donald Trump's policies can make them more prosperous, can make the world more peaceful, and can secure that southern border. If we do those things, we're going to win.
Walz is governor of the Midwest state of Minnesota and is running with Kamala Harris. He says Democrats are looking out for working-class Americans, unlike his opponent.
Like all regular people I grew up with in the heartland, J.D. studied at Yale, had his career funded by Silicon Valley billionaires, and then wrote a bestseller trashing that community. Come on! That's not what middle America is. And I gotta tell you, I can't wait to debate the guy.
Vance is a one-time Trump critic who won the former president's endorsement for his Senate run. Vance has since aligned himself with Trump's America First approach.
Now our enemies and a lot of Democrats call us populists, like it's something of an insult. But if being a populist means being on the side of working people rather than the powerful elites who hollowed out our middle class and sent us into stupid foreign wars, then sign me up.
Vance recently told European leaders they need to pay more to help Ukraine fight off the Russian invasion. Walz says Vance and Trump mean to relinquish U.S. leadership.
When Republicans used to talk about freedom, many of them actually meant it. They weren't going to turn their backs on our allies. They weren't going to leave Ukraine to themselves.
Vance says Harris is hurting working Americans in favor of illegal immigrants.
What Kamala Harris seems to want to do is to give all the benefits of American citizenship to people who shouldn't even be here, and that's going to bankrupt this country and make it impossible for normal people to afford to buy a home, to afford to buy groceries, to benefit from that social safety net.
Walz says Trump's career in business and in politics shows he's only looking out for rich people like him.
Rig the economy for those at the top and screw the people at the bottom. That's what they do. Your costs go up. They repeal the Affordable Care Act and bring us back to pre-existing conditions. They cut Social Security and Medicare, the very things that keeps my mom out of poverty.
Tuesday's matchup is the last scheduled debate before the November 5th election, with early voting already underway in some states. Scott Stearns, VOA News.
A senior U.S. official says Iran appears to imminently ready to launch a ballistic missile attack against Israel. The official, who spoke on condition of anonymity, warned of, quote, severe consequences if such an attack by Iran takes place. Tensions in the region have risen since the Israeli airstrike last week killed Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah. Israel's military is reporting heavy fighting Tuesday in southern Lebanon after its ground troops launched an incursion against Iran-backed Hezbollah militants. Meantime, Washington is trying to keep a Mid-East war from snowballing. VOA's Anita Powell has more.
Lebanon is on fire after Israel's weekend assassination of Hezbollah's leader, a move that threatens to let loose a wider war in the region. On Monday, President Joe Biden was unequivocal about what needs to happen next.
I'm more aware than you might know, and I'm comfortable with them stopping. We should have a ceasefire now.
But the question is how? How is Washington, Israel's main weapons supplier, going to pull the plug on this violence? VOA asked the White House.
Our policy has not changed. It just hasn't. It has not changed.
Lebanon's leaders say they have no faith in Israel's intentions.
The government is doing everything in its power to confront this destructive, hateful war that Israel is waging against us. And we went to the United Nations looking for a solution, and we met with world leaders. But the enemy went with the intention of treachery and planning more massacres.
And Israel's leader indicated Monday that he is digging in for a fight.
We are at war for our very existence. We will join forces, go hand in hand, and defeat our enemies.
Meanwhile, Washington is joined by other powers in begging for this to stop.
There is still hope, but time is short. I therefore urge Israel to refrain from any ground incursions and to a ceasefire. I call on Hezbollah to do the same, and to refrain from any action likely to lead to regional destabilization.
Analysts say Biden and allies have given Netanyahu options to stop the violence by pushing for a 21-day ceasefire in Lebanon and a deal to free hostages held by Hamas in Gaza as a step toward ending that conflict.
Unfortunately, I would say that the history of their conversations over the past year has been that regardless of what the president's arguments are, regardless of what he has pushed, Benjamin Netanyahu is following his own course and is not responding to U.S. concerns or advice.
For the people of southern Lebanon and for the region, these are not abstract discussions. This is a matter of life or death. Anita Powell, VOA News, the White House.
Since the United States completed its military withdrawal from Niger last month, the head of U.S. Africa Command says the U.S. is resetting in West Africa to try to help local partners fight the growing terror threat in the region. General Michael Langley sat down exclusively with VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb to share his concerns and hopes for the Africa-led fight against Islamic terrorism in the Sahel.
The only real success I've really seen is across the Sahel is right there in the tri-border region, and it's the multinational joint task force. And this is with Cameroon, with Chad, with Nigeria. Nigeria used to be in, but of course they're alliance of Sahelian states now post the coup.
Could southern Libya be a solution to this Sahel challenge that you have? Is that something you were looking at as a potential solution?
We've affected the conversation. This is very much in the diplomatic realm. So we engage with the two military sides and the GNU and the LNA leadership because we need to affect unity. We need to affect unity to move forward. For us to fully be able to support building their capacity to fight terrorism, anything emanating from the Sahel, we do need them in agreement, in concert, work together as a joint force. But I will tell you, there is another elephant in the room, elephant in that country, and it's the Russian Federation. And so their activities are irrespective of the law of armed conflict, irrespective of rules-based order, irrespective to human rights. So we want to be the preferred partner. We don't tell them to choose. Both the GNU and LNA understand that, and they have made overtures that they do want to work with us. So we're in the nascent stages, but they need to address the political impasse that they have between the East and the West. And so our State Department is working that effort.
How big is Russia's Africa Corps?
I don't have a particular numbers that they've introduced to Mali, limited numbers in Burkina Faso, and also in Libya. It's in the hundreds, I'll just put it that way. It's not extensive just yet.
Some critics have looked at the terror threat now in West Africa and how bad it is. And they point to France, and they point to the United States, and they point to Germany and others, and they say that the West has failed the Sahel. Do they have a valid argument?
If we look at the numbers of the global index, for terrorism, 40% of those killed across the globe came from the Sahel. So that's concerning. It emanated from the ideology, I would say, emanated down through Syria, through the Maghreb. Arab Spring contributed to it. The fall of Libya contributed to it. That's how it's grown and metastasized to the numbers you have today. But those that are joining those ranks are very few foreign fighters. They're indigenous to these countries. So that ideology, that caliphate, if you will, that jihad type ideology is preying upon the civil society, preying upon the military age males. As we're resetting counterterrorism, of course, you know, we pulled out of Niger, but we are engaging with coastal West Africa countries because if we look at the what direction is metastasized is on the northern regions of Cote d'Ivoire, of Ghana, and Togo, and Benin. They understand the enduring solution for terrorism is not about kinetics. So, and they too come up with the whole of government approach to collectively come up with a solution set of engaging with the youth that are very vulnerable to joining one of these caliphates or jihadist type organizations.
For more on that report, I'm joined live from U.S. military headquarters by VOA's Pentagon reporter Carla Babb. Carla, from your interviews with senior AFRICOM leaders, it sounds like what the U.S. presence will look like in West Africa is still very much in flux.
Well, Esther, good evening. That is right. General Langley told me that he has been going on a listening tour across West Africa to talk to the individual countries and find out what they need militarily or otherwise to try to get at this terror threat. In some cases, he says that, you know, the U.S. finds that they can provide military help, whether it's intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, or perhaps training, advising, and assisting, or equipment, or even perhaps a state partnership program. That's where African nations are paired with the national guards of individual states in the United States. In other cases, he says it's not a military solution that these countries need. They need help for development programs and economic programs that USAID can provide. So they are still figuring out what that presence is going to look like. Those conversations, he says, are still ongoing.
And Carla, since you are at the Pentagon, we know the U.S. military has been following very closely the Israeli attacks in Lebanon, especially after the killing of the leader Hassan Nasrallah. What are they saying at the Pentagon? What more are they talking about?
Well, the Pentagon says Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin was caught off guard by the attack that killed Hassan Nasrallah. He said that there were very frank discussions between him and his Israeli counterpart. I mean, you've got to look at what's been happening and what's been unfolding. As President Joe Biden is calling for a ceasefire, Israel is starting a ground incursion into Lebanon. So it's a very tense situation right now, and the U.S. has responded. The U.S. has decided that the carrier strike group, USS Abraham Lincoln, is going to remain in the CENTCOM region. In addition to that, the MU, the Marine Expeditionary Unit, USS Wasp, will also remain on the Eastern Med should they be needed to help evacuate U.S. citizens. And the U.S. has decided to send a few thousand additional forces to the Middle East. These are not ground troops. These are actually troops that will help with air power. I've been told that squadrons of F-10s, F-16s, and A-10s, F-15s, and F-16s are arriving, and one of them has already arrived in the region. So lots of changes underway because the U.S. wants to be prepared should an attack against its forces or an attack against Israel occur.
And Carla, very quickly, Iran is the back of Lebanese Hezbollah. What are officials at the Pentagon saying if Iran decides to respond?
Well, Iran has warned that it would respond. And so U.S. officials are concerned now. In fact, you had mentioned that one official has said that an attack is imminent, and they want to be prepared to defend their troops, as I said, and also potentially defend Israel. Let's not forget that just in April, Iran launched an unprecedented attack, a direct attack against Israel that was not considered a successful attack. Most of the Most of the missiles that were fired were either intercepted by the U.S. or a coalition, or they failed to launch.
Carla, many thanks for your reporting. VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Barb with that update. Still to come, October 1st marks the United Nations International Day of Older People. We'll be right back.
This week on Straight Talk Africa, artificial intelligence is a game changer worldwide. On the African continent, scientists and developers are using AI to push the boundaries in medicine and business. Can artificial intelligence become an engine of growth in Africa? Join me, Vincent McCory, and my guests on the next Straight Talk Africa.
In other news, former U.S. President Jimmy Carter is celebrating his 100th birthday on Tuesday. It's the first time an American president has lived a full century. The Democrat served as president from 1977 to 1981 and then worked for more than 40 years leading the Carter Center, a non-governmental organization he and his wife Rosalynn co-founded in 1982. Rosalynn Carter died last year at age 96. October 1st marks the United Nations International Day of Older People, an event commemorated around the world. It's a moment to raise awareness of opportunities and challenges faced by aging populations. The theme this year is Aging with Dignity, the importance of strengthening care and support systems for older persons worldwide. For more insight, Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu spoke with Carol Agengo, Global Initiatives Lead and Africa Regional Representative for HelpAge International.
Ageism is where you discriminate against an individual on the basis of their age. This happens at two levels. You can have ageism against younger people and ageism against older people, or ageism even against middle-aged people. But what is most common is where discrimination happens against older people because of their age. They're not seen to have been, they've lived their life, they are no longer valued in society, they've got nothing to offer, they're a problem to society, they shouldn't have a voice. They should basically be seen and not be heard. So that is very common. Amongst younger people, it plays out, especially in the job front, where you advertise for a job, a young person comes, they have the qualifications, they may not have the experience, but they have the knowledge to be able to gain this experience, but to dismiss them basically because of their age. We see a lot of ageism against older people.
How does ageism affect the mental health and well-being of older individuals in African communities?
Where ageism exists, then that means that there's discrimination. Then discrimination almost always is almost always followed by a violation. So this happens, like if you're discriminated against because you're old. Let's take the case of COVID. When COVID-19 hit and the vaccines were rolled out in Africa, it was not always very easy to get them. So the queues were very long. And we knew that COVID affected older people. They are more predisposed to COVID. But what would happen in many, many cases in Africa, in the studies that we did, you'd find that when older people would go for the vaccines, number one, the queues would be very, very long. There'd be no attention paid to the fact that these older people cannot queue for that long. When the vaccinations would start, you'd hear health workers saying, we want to save the younger people, since in any event, you older people are dying, you don't need the vaccine. of course, that affects you as a person, that affects your mental health. And it also doesn't make sense, because if it's the older people who are predisposed to the virus, then why not protect them first? Why not make arrangements to make sure that they get vaccinated first? So of course, that had a very serious effect on older people. When you go to a doctor and you're pushed aside, it affects your mental health, but it also affects the mental health of your caregivers, your children, or the people who take you to hospital, because then you don't get the treatment you deserve. They don't know whether you're going to survive or not. That affects your mental health and their mental health. And then, of course, cases of isolation that come about.
So what specific strategies does Help Age employ to combat ageism and promote the rights of older people?
At Help Age, we work on 4 main issues. We work on income security, we work on healthy aging, inclusive humanitarian action, and we work towards a society for all ages. So to do that, then, one, we prioritize the issues of older people. We make sure that we have the rights, the voice, the agency is taken care of, so that then we're taking care of issues of discrimination, taking care of the issues of their well-being and their dignity.
And finally, what is your message?
The first one is that older people are human beings who have rights like everybody else. When the Universal Declaration on Human Rights was passed, it was not passed for any age group, it was passed for every human being in the world. Number 2 is we have a slogan that says, older people are older and they're not over. That means that they have a voice, they have something to contribute to society, and their lived experiences should not be ignored. Our third message is that even though we look at a future mainly from a young lens, these young people will grow older. So we want to use the lived experiences of older people to inform the experiences of the younger people. So intergenerational solidarity is extremely important. We want those addressed so that when the younger people step into older ages, they step into an older age where the rights, their well-being, and their dignity is upheld.
That was Carol Agengo, Global Initiative Lead and Africa Regional Representative for Help Age International, speaking with Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu. John and Joyce Wanda have dedicated themselves to providing quality education and health care to children. VOA's Paul Ndiho joins us now with a special guest. Hello, Paul.
Thanks, Esther. With the support of donors from around the world, these 540 boys and girls not only excelled academically, but also gained the opportunity to pursue secondary and university education, a testament to the impact of the Arlington Academy of Hope in Bududa district in eastern Uganda. To learn more, Joyce Wanda, co-founder Arlington Academy, joins me live in studio. Hello, Joyce.
Hi, Paul. Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about what your projects are, what you're doing in Uganda.
Awesome. First of all, my name is Joyce Wanda. I am so privileged to be here. We work on education, healthcare, and development initiatives in rural eastern Uganda. We support over 1,400 students at any one time, from preschool all the way up to university.
I was looking at some of the images that you shared with me. You and John, and of course a whole lot of people who have supported you over the years are doing an incredible job over there. What got you into this selfless help project?
John and I, John's my husband, we came here about 28 years ago, and we found that, our children, when we took them to school, the quality of education that they were receiving was really great compared to what we had growing up. And so we really had the desire to do something to help the children that we had left in Uganda. So we started by supporting a few students through scholarships, and then eventually, in partnership with the parents, we were able to build a school that we called Arlington Junior School after the community that we grew up. And the purpose was really to provide quality education that would help those students be able to progress through school. We eventually were able to build a second school in Namsindwa district that is called Matua Junior School that also supports students there. When the kids finish primary school, they are in the rural environment, but they really excel. They are able to pass highly, and they're able to go to the best of, some of the best of Uganda secondary schools. And even when they reach there, they excel, and they're able to go on to university. Now, for the longest time, we've worked with the two primary schools that we run, Arlington Junior School and Matua Junior School. But beyond that, we support 26 outreach schools that are government-run. We offer scholarships for those students to come and join the program, and then also get an opportunity to progress. We've supported over 300 students that have gone through the program to graduate with degrees and diplomas. We've been able to produce medical doctors, lawyers, engineers, plumbers, electricians, teachers through the program. And these are kids that received, first of all, the foundation training from our schools, and with the nurturing and mentorship, they are able to excel to be just about anything that they want to be. Beyond education programs, we also run 2 medical clinics that we call Beatrice Tiene Medical Clinics. Between the 2 clinics, one in Namisindo and one in Bududa, we are able to treat 30,000 patients every year, and they are a lifeline for so many people.
Unfortunately, Joyce, I would love to have you back, but we've run out of time. Joyce Wanda, thank you so much. Joyce Wanda is the co-founder of the Arlington Academy of Hope. Esther, back to you.
Thank you so much, Paul. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.